Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sons of Mjolnir. As always, I am your host, Fat Thor, and today I am joined by a very special guest. I am joined by friend of the show. You may know him as one of the hosts of the Weekly Polls podcast, Ricky Z. My man, Ricky, how you doing, man? So glad to have you.
I am excellent. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. And I want to thank you too for everyone watching and listening to this out there. Me and Ricky have rescheduled this like 10 million times. And I am just so glad that we finally locked down the day to do it. And I want to thank you for your patience in getting this done. But we are here, man, and I am again so excited. So before we get in, we're going to be talking Invincible and all that today. But before we get into that, I do want to talk just very quickly for those of our listeners out there that may not be familiar with you. Me and Ricky worked together for a while over at the Weekly Polls. Like I said, he's one of the hosts for that podcast. One of my favorites. Him and our other good friend Derek, also known as Grimace Wayne. And I mean, it's been a while since you guys pod, but I just saw you guys did an episode. How did it feel to get back behind the mic, my friend?
It was cool, man. It was nice to catch up with Derek, and I know he's been super busy, new job and all that stuff. And so yeah, that was most of the episode was just us kind of BSing about nerdy crap, whatever's
Yeah.
been going on. Because we spent some time before and after that just kind of chatting, doing the catch up thing. So yeah, it was fun to get back on and chat with him.
Yeah, and I know that you do a couple other shows. I've been seeing you pop up on a couple of the other podcasts as well. You want to plug some of those as well?
Yeah, honestly, I just kind of go where people ask. It's just like I like guesting because there's not a lot of work to it, so I get notes, I do notes and stuff like that, but I don't have to worry about the edits. I don't have to worry about
Dude.
any of the other stuff. I can just do some social media plugs and come in, and people are willing to ask what's in my head for some reason, and we just have some chat. So yeah, the wrong opinion is one that I've been doing a fair amount with Jake Clark. I can't remember his exact Twitter handle, but it's all over my profile.
I'll throw it
Um,
in the description for this
oh,
video
sweet.
for
And
everyone.
then he has his personal account, and then he has the wrong opinion, which started as an MCU rewatch thing, and now he's got a wrong opinion basketball one, and he's got a wrong opinion. I think it's just like general film conversation because the MCU rewatch is caught up through. Well, shoot, what was the one I just did with him? I don't even remember what we just did. But we've at least gone through Love and Thunder for sure.
I said
And
that's the
it
one I remember you guys doing last.
and I think I did. Oh, I did Quantum Mania with him the same week I did with Derek when we did our little reunion thing.
Hmm.
We did Quantum Mania that week as well. It's just um, I've done a handful with him. He's done all of the movies with varying guests. That one's been more frequent, and then stuff with Derek. I don't think I've messed around with anybody recently. Some of that, like we were talking about before we started recording, was like some of the stuff is, oh yeah, I just did that,
Hmm.
but I didn't. When
Yeah.
I was talking to Derek, I'm like, oh yeah, I just was talking to Comic Burrito about, and they're like, that was like 3 years ago, man.
No, literally. I mean, like you said, we were just talking about it. And, for those out there who might not know, actually, the first podcast I ever did was the weekly poll, or yeah,
Oh,
the weekly
sick!
polls.
I
And
forgot. I think you told me that.
yeah, we did the Better Ray Bill episode. And like you said, it was like a million years ago, it feels like, but it was like 2, 3 years ago at this point. So, I mean, if anyone, watching and listening to this out there enjoys our show, thank Ricky and Derek because I probably wouldn't be
Oh,
doing this if I didn't do their show first.
oh, that's so nice.
It's true though. It's true. Like I said, I never did a podcast before, and I remember I was so nervous hopping on with you guys. I was like, man, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but now I sound like an idiot every week, so it's all good. But speaking of sounding like an idiot, let's talk about something awesome and something that we're both super excited about. You are one of the biggest Invincible fans that I know. When the show started, you were beating the Invincible drum from the very beginning. And now we just wrapped up on season 2, which I personally thought was an amazing season. And I'm super excited for what's next. So, starting off the conversation, I just want to ask you broadly, what do you think of not only season 2, but the show as a whole, being a fan of the comics?
Broadly, it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good timing for me in my like comic movie watching mindset
Hmm.
journey, I guess we'd call it. Because it started with when we didn't have comic book movies or TV. I mean, we had cartoons, but you didn't really have much. So you wanted, or maybe not everybody, but I was like, oh, it's not what happened in the comic. And I like wanted to see the comic book on the screen. It's then obviously over, well, shoot. I mean, we've had 20 solid years, 25 and change solid years of fairly consistent comic book related movies.
Hmm.
I'm just starting from basically like the X-Men Spider-Man time, not predating that.
Yeah.
Where we really started getting more movies, and it started to transition my mindset into I just want something good that I can
Hmm.
enjoy, which is great because Invincible has been a really nice blend of like very loyal to the stories while being different, but not in an egregious way that like departs from the characters. You still have the core of the characters is still represented really well, and the storytelling is no, while the story may take different turns, it's no different in quality. It's still edge of your seat, and then as soon as you think you get a break, here's another awful terrible thing that's also really awesome. I think it's been really good. It's been a fun ride, and uh I let myself kind of take a break and stay away from reading it for a bit. So there's been some surprises where I'm like, wait, what happened to the comic? I don't remember.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter because it's been really good.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I just think it's so impressive. Like, even going back and reading the comic and watching the episodes over and over again, it still like blows my mind how they're able to translate the story almost one to one with like how it plays out, but also add these like very small changes sometimes that
Yeah.
make huge impacts on like the characters. And one in particular that we talk about all the time that I wanted to talk about with you is like characters like Debbie. I think is a perfect example. Like Debbie in the show is way different than her in the comics, but I mean her storyline plays out very similarly, right? Like, but
Yeah.
it's just these small changes. I think they do that with so many different characters. Mark, Adam, Eve, and Amber, I think, is another perfect example too.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I guess I'll start with Debbie in response was they did a really good job of taking, like I said, I kind of stayed away from reading it for a bit. So in
Mm-hmm.
my head, I remember Debbie as this like awesome, strong character who left codependency to become very independent.
Mm-hmm.
And well, like we know how things work out later. Um, so I won't. I don't know how many spoilers go out in the show.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I'm
we're
just gonna
definitely
give
getting
a
into some
in
comic
advance.
talk.
I'll just say spoiler just in case I slip up. So just
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But so I forgot how until a couple weeks ago I went back and was kind of started towards the beginning just to flip through and make sure I was more prepared for our talk
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't forgetting stuff. And yeah, she was a bit more of a wreck in the books initially, in a more like she still was obviously super devastated in the show. The way they did it kept really, I think, the important parts of her struggle while also still allowing her to kind of settle into the independence a little bit earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where it's a little bit I don't know. I think some of the super sad stuff that she was expressing emotionally is probably not super great to translate to the screen right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a really good job of making it watchable, whereas like the slightly more, I guess, like just feeling like super helpless. I feel like in the book she was really just beside herself,
Yeah.
very drinky, and they hinted at some of her drinking and stuff in the show, but it was I feel like a little bit bigger of an issue in the comic, and her lack of ability to function
Mm-hmm.
without Nolan. I thought they did a really nice job of it because in the comics, to me, she winds up being a really strong character. Like a really, I enjoyed her as a character. Um, as the comics got even deeper, she just because she becomes, just a stronger person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and obviously, I mean, the other characters, Amber is largely welcomed change. She's not as bad in the comics as I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Like as I'm flipping through, I'm like, I was a little hard on her. She wasn't, because they kind of just made her like this idiot kind of
Yeah,
weirdo. And in my memory, anyway, I went back. I'm like, oh, she's not that bad. She's a plot moving piece, and that's about it. Like
very
she's still kind of
sidelined.
just, yeah, she's kind of just there.
Hmm.
But she does, even in the comics, she does impact Mark as he transitions to adulthood and how he handles future relationships. Um, and then in the show, they made her much more. I mean, she was strong and competent and intelligent from the start. um I still found her super annoying in the beginning. Like I hated her. I was just like, no matter how we spin it, she's the worst. And then they made it, it's like it's done well, where you're
Yeah.
not supposed to want them to be together forever,
Hmm.
but you also want them to be together. So it's really, it makes you confused, just like in a real relationship where you're like, man, I don't know about this. No, it's good. I don't know. Ah, I just thought they did a really good job, and everybody's been true enough to the basic character where any departures, I think, are have been welcomed,
Yeah.
in my opinion, so far.
I 100% agree. And I think too, it makes me very interested. Speaking of kind of changes from the book to the screen, I feel like we've talked about this on the show before. It feels like there could be some more in store for characters like Amber in particular. Like, as well as I do in the books, again, for everyone watching, listen, spoiler alert, we're going to try not to get too crazy with, the comic book spoilers, but we are going to be talking about the comic books very freely here. But in the books, when they break up, it's just that's kind of it. And we have
Yeah.
the thing with Gary, like that one issue with Gary and that whole
Stupid
situation.
Gary.
Yeah, dumbass Gary. But it feels like in the show, though, since they've done all this work to kind of give Amber a little bit more authority, and especially like in their breakup, even because again, in the books, like the breakup between Amber and Mark is very kind of one sided to Mark. I think Amber literally just says okay, and like that's kind of the end. Like Mark goes on this huge tangent of like, oh, like it's I think it's just not fair to you, blah blah blah, and she's like, okay, like whatever. So it
Yeah.
feels like maybe in the show Amber could have another like bigger role to play later on. What do you think about that? Do you think I'm
I
going
think,
crazy brain with that, or
well, I think if you go, I think it was one of your episodes, you guys mentioned her potentially getting like powers or
yeah,
something.
like that's
I think
crazy.
that's
I'm gonna agree.
I
That's
think
like
that's
nuts for sure.
crazy.
No,
Yeah.
that's
But no,
tinfoil
I think,
hattery, but like more grounded.
yeah.
Do you think
No,
she'll
I
have like
think
some more to do?
I don't see why she wouldn't. And honestly, because I think Zazie Beetz is somebody, like, people like her
Yeah.
and she does a good job. I know, who knows, maybe she's super busy. Maybe, I don't know if they're bringing her back for Deadpool. I don't know what's going on with her career wise, but
Yeah.
um and I don't even remember if is she going to be in the next Joker movie too. I have no idea, but everybody likes her. She does good voice work. And Amber has, like you said, like she has still value. I
Mm.
mean, in the comics, they kind of did this is one of the coolest things. And the Invincible podcast kind of talked about this. I tried not to listen to any of their new stuff because I didn't want to like steal any of their things while we're
Yeah.
talking. But they said something where they were just talking about that transition scene,
Hmm.
the breakup scene where it's like where he's talking to Art and it's
Yeah.
switching back and forth between him and Amber.
I love
And it's
that.
kind of, it works because in the comic, he like you said, he goes on his thing and she basically is like, yeah, I was thinking all the same stuff, or
Hmm.
pretty much. So you get the same end result, which is, yeah, we were both thinking that, but we can save some pages in the comic by not having them both say it.
Yeah.
And in the show they both say it and it takes the same amount of time. And I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I think given her incentive, her own, like, she's just feels this draw to help people and be beneficial to society and all these different things. I don't see why she wouldn't be involved, particularly because it seems like her and Eve have a good relationship, and Eve has a similar
Yeah.
bend to where she is. That's what she wants to do. She wants to take care of people a little outside of the standard superhero shtick.
Hmm.
And I mean, it'd be less awkward, I think, than what a lot of other situations might be to have them work together on something. I don't know. I could see them doing that, and it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
because it
100%
seems
what I
like,
was thinking.
yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. And now maybe not everybody agrees that it wouldn't bother them, but I mean, I think there's a maturity that Amber's character shows that is not typical of a high school, college age kid.
Hmm.
But a lot of people, they do date specifically to marry. And that once they realize this isn't going the distance, we're just going to end it. So it's not unrealistic for her to think the way she thinks about stuff, or for him the same way, to kind of be like, listen, I know it can't go any further because it's just going to be insane. And her getting almost, or the threat of murder, kind of
Yeah.
freaked her out. And it is, I thought they did that really well too, but
Hmm.
but that, it seems like it's believable that her and Eve could, because of their maturity levels, be able to be like, oh yeah, it's cool, me
Hmm.
and him didn't work out, I know you guys are like, you guys are supposed to be together, it's whatever, let's go help people. I don't know.
I think that that's very possible. And like for all the reasons you just said, I think Amber has shown to be very mature, and also like not even necessarily mature, but just like honest about her feelings. And
Yeah,
again, the show has given her opportunities to have her own voice within the relationship. So I think you're right on the money, and that would be my best guess, is that I think it seems like the show has played up her relationship with Eve a little bit more than the comics did. Like
yeah,
in the comics, we get the issue of Mark and Amber going to Africa, but we
yeah,
never see like her and Eve just kind of hanging out together, which we
yeah,
do
they
in the
don't connect,
show.
like, yeah, they're like
Yes,
actual friends in the show, like they
that's
know
what I
each other, they're
mean.
friends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
and I
think
I
that that's
think
for
the
sure where it might go.
yeah, the comic was more kind of like your stereotypical high school relationship, is like, oh, that's the guy I like and that's the girl he's with. Meh, she's whatever.
Yeah.
Not, and it's not like they were against each other. They got along.
Hmm.
But Amber, I think they talked about it quite a bit, but they showed it, at least in my memory, that there was like this tension where Amber felt like there was a draw to Eve and Eve wanted to be with Mark. And it
Hmm.
was so, which wasn't bad at all. I mean, it's a very believable, normal story. This is just another version of an also believable story, which I think is the
Hmm.
key for, like we were talking about earlier with different departures, is as long as it's believable,
Yeah.
as much as you can make a ridiculous superhero world, you know.
Exactly. But I want to talk about some of the crazy stuff. So we've kind of
Oh
talked about
boy.
the show, in, broadly as, a whole, but let's talk about some specifics for season 2. So like I said, season 2 just came to an end,
Yeah,
and
forget my notes.
I think the season finale for season 2 was probably, I mean, the mid break on what's it called, Thraxa, was pretty
Yeah.
nuts, like the battle
Yeah.
with all the other Viltrumites. But I don't know, the Levy stuff is just like, I remember reading that in the comic for the first time, and I felt like the show achieved in giving me that same feeling watching it on the screen transpire, even though I knew what was
Yes.
happening. So what are your thoughts on the, like I said, the Levy situation, the whole thing, I thought he was stronger, that whole moment from the show.
That it's funny because, yeah, just I don't know, whatever, 2 weeks ago, I
Hmm.
went back and read through um that story, which they, I mean, obviously in the comics it's paced a little different.
Yeah.
Um and they kind of, the stories don't overlap the way that they do in the show, but they're all happening somewhat similarly.
Hmm.
And it was, a lot of that stuff was really close to shot for shot, but in like a good way, not in a boring
Yeah.
way. It was I had to turn my phone because I had some of my notes are digital. I usually do
Oh,
them on
you're
hard
good.
copy, but I was in the airport when we were talking before, so I was like watching and taking notes and stuff. Um, but yeah, I I thought the whole Angstrom thing was really good, where it was like, cliffhanger is the wrong word, but that like shock surprise with some cliffhanger, where comic is like, here's a big battle. Oh my gosh, we made it through this big battle. Thank goodness we can relax. And then psych, you turn the page, you're like, holy crap. Now I have to
Hmm.
wait a month for the next issue to tell me what just happened. And they did the same thing with the show, was, oh, Mark, you're good. Hey, you should probably come home real quick because I'm gonna like murder your mom or whatever. And like all of that was crazy. Angstrom's just a really interesting character anyway. Just it's just weird, and I don't know. I've liked that whole thing with
Mm.
I can't even think of something where I was like, oh, I don't know. I didn't really love that. It was as far as that particular story, I was just like, this is all good.
Yeah, they nailed it.
He's got
And
an
something,
ugly head, I guess. His head's
yeah,
dumb looking.
ugly ass brain head. I'm
Yeah,
sold. But
yeah, he's like a
something,
brain turned into a cape down his back.
yeah, dude, ugly, ugly. And I was gonna say something, but I feel like I want to save that for people. I don't want to spoil it.
Oh
But
man.
something I did love about the Angstrom stuff is, like you said, it is pretty much almost exactly like you can take the page, put it next to the screen for pretty much the entire fight sequence. But one
Yeah.
thing I thought was a little different that I really liked was one kind of going back to the changes with Debbie is one that Debbie fights back against Angstrom, which in the
Yeah,
book she
that
just
was right.
kind of gets fucked up.
Yeah.
But the other thing though was that we saw Angstrom like struggling with all the memories from his multiple selves, like from the
Yeah.
multiverse, and like he's like questioning himself, like when she, or I think it's when Mark says like that he tried to save him, and he's like, we see him like actually like questioning, like, did I try to save him? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I love that.
yeah, he's like kind of going nuts, and I love that because I mean, we definitely, like you said, we get the same vibe from the comic for sure. I mean, the message is received, like this dude's fucking Looney Tunes, right? But
Yeah.
I thought the show just kind of emphasized that a little bit more and really kind of gave us as the audience a little bit more perspective of what's going on with Levy. Like again, like he is fucking losing it.
Yeah, I really liked that memory, whatever you want to call it, that struggle was really it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting because it's just it almost felt like to me like they like Kirkman was thinking I wanted to kind of flesh this out more or differently at the time,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe he thought later, man, this would have been a cool angle, and now he's getting to kind of go back and it's like it's almost like bonus features into the comic kind of thing,
Yeah.
behind the scenes kind of stuff. And it's because obviously in any comic story, right, whether it's like an Avengers thing or it's
Mm-hmm.
something like with Justice League stuff, you have so many things happening all at once. Of course there's stuff happening in other comics that aren't happening in the one you're reading,
Yeah.
so there probably could have been a whole mini series of just Angstrom stuff.
Oh yeah.
um and I thought that was really cool because he's like you said, he's fully Looney Tunes, but he's like this guy who had such a potential for good
Mm-hmm.
and a desire for good, and then he got messed up by this machine and this accident that now he's all jacked up. So he's got a bunch of good intentions covered up with losing his mind
Mm-hmm.
because well, like we saw on the show, right, he's trying to stop a horrible thing from happening.
Yeah.
So he pulls the helmet off, and he'd rather have the whole thing fail than build it on blood, or however he put it. And it's so it's like all of that seemingly doing the right thing, and now he's messed up, and he can't get right, and he's so smart. So it's like he's questioning because he's traveled through all these different across the multiverse, so he's seen so many things, and then it's like second guessing. I can't even imagine because I'm like, what did I do
Yeah.
yesterday? And
So
he's like, what did I do in this other world, this other time when he was evil, but there was a kid, but there's not a kid this time, and now there's this other guy, and is he a bad guy? No, I don't know what to do. And
yeah,
but
my
he's
brain
also
hurts just
like,
thinking about
yeah,
it.
right. And his brain is like all down his back, so he's just got all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
I thought that whole thing was cool too, where like in the comic he like I think he used like a table or a desk or something to like snap Debbie's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the show, to me, it seemed like he was strong, even stronger in the show. And because he just straight snaps her arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was kind
Like
of
a
brutal. I was like,
twig.
oh, and I mean, this whole show's been brutality from the get go,
Mm-hmm.
which you knew was going to come. But I was just like, oh my gosh, he
Yeah, I
just
think she
snapped it.
just
And,
falls
uh,
over the table and it like snap in the comic. That's how like
yeah,
it
he's
just
just
kind of
like rough or
snaps.
whatever.
Yeah, but like you said, he just, snaps that shit like a twig.
I
But
remember when it
something,
happened. I'm like, was he that strong? I don't remember. I was like,
yeah.
forget it. I'll shut up. I'll watch it. And my wife's like, I don't know. She's like, whatever, man, just watch the show.
Yeah. And something that the show made me kind of think about a little bit more, which again, I think just kind of goes to show how the show was able to just kind of translate those same themes a little bit more, is like you were just talking about. Like, I was thinking he has all these memories from all these different angstroms from all the
Yeah.
different multiverses, right? And he said in one of the episodes, and I'm pretty sure he says the same in the comic, but in almost every other multiverse, Mark is bad. Like in
Yeah.
almost every other one, Mark joins Nolan and he goes evil. So he's flooded with hundreds, if not thousands, of
Yeah.
memories from his other selves of Mark doing terrible shit, which is
Yeah.
another thing that we see in the show where we see some of these memories from
Some of it is,
uh
oh man, some of it
yeah,
is rough.
exactly. And we do not see that in the comic. So again, I think it just like really goes to, again, Levy's madness and kind of understanding why he's so messed up. And I think again, it's something that I didn't really think as hard on in the comic book as I did in the show.
Yeah,
But
they did for sure did a better, I don't want to say better, but like a more
yeah,
intensive exploration of that.
exactly. And I also want to talk about too, speaking of craziness of season 2, we got to talk about Anissa a little bit and that whole introduction of her character, like you alluded to already a little bit when she came at Amber, and that really, kind of opened her eyes to the dangers that
Yeah,
she
that
could
was,
be in with being with Mark. So what did you, again, just kind of your broad thoughts of what you think of Anissa being introduced in this season? Because I mean, again, like you said, we're playing around with the timeline a little bit here. So they could have introduced her a little bit later, but they decided to throw her in here now.
yeah, I mean, it was, I thought it was pretty wild. It was just like, oh, that's nice. They get to have this nice little date thing and
Mm-hmm.
on. He's trying to be a good boyfriend and Amber, and it's like as much as, to be fair, a lot of why I get annoyed that Amber's there is because it's like I know Eve is the one, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, go away now. But then you get sucked in because they're doing a good job. So I'm like, oh, it's nice that she finally has her boyfriend who's actually gonna be a boyfriend, and
Mm-hmm.
she gets to live like a normal person instead of having to just be on hold waiting for whether he's gonna die or be trapped in space or whatever. This is so nice, warm fuzzies. And they're like, who's this chick talking? I hear a voice. What is that? Oh, that girl. This is not good. And then I start freaking out because I'm like, wait, now in the comic, no, that the thing people have been talking about on the internet a lot. I'm really not going to spoil that one.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, okay, wait, that's not yet. That'll be way later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whew. All right, we'll wait. It's fine.
Took a breath for a second.
Yeah, I was just like, wait a second, wait a second. No, we're good. But yeah, the that whole scene was crazy, and I thought because it's so subtle, like she grabs him by the neck, and you can't even tell as a viewer, especially with like a cartoon, right?
Yeah.
You can't tell that she's doing anything in particular with her hand. But Amber's face, they did a really good job of animating the emotion into her face to where she went from, oh, she's scared to like kind of indescribably scared, where like I couldn't accurately describe it how scared she looks. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It was because it was just that level. Like if you see somebody where you're like, oh, something for real is happening right now, and
Yeah.
it's like hitting home for everybody, and now you as the viewer are like, oh,
The
they did a really good job
tension.
animating that.
Yeah, the tension
uh,
of that scene is just like, oh, it literally on the edge of my seat. Even
yeah,
again, knowing it was happening, but I think you hit it on the head with, the way they did her facial expressions. It was just, ooh, it was palpable in the air. But I
yeah,
mean, I want the one thing. So the reason I bring up Anissa is because I feel like it's a perfect segue into kind of again, we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers in the comics here, but I kind of want to talk to you about what we could be seeing in season 3. And I mean, we know a season there's been stories breaking the past couple days of supposedly season 4 and 5 have been announced or greenlit, but
yeah.
I've seen that that's not like 100% for sure. So I don't want to say that that's for sure if it's not, but I mean, we all know that we're getting another season. Like there's no way we're not getting another season.
I can't. Yeah, I can't imagine not. And I'm not. I'm not to like plug everybody else's Invincible related
Oh
content while
no,
I'm talking
please.
to you on
We
yours, but
Hey, we love supporting our fellow podcasters and the homies. So
see,
please
isn't
shout
that nice?
everyone. Yeah, we
Isn't
love it,
that nice?
dude.
So the Invincible podcast, to me, if you don't hear it from them,
Hmm.
it's probably not confirmed. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's not legit. That doesn't mean it won't happen.
Hmm.
They posted something that said, I can't remember what they worded, but I didn't even know what they were talking about. They kept it vague, but it was basically saying like, if it hasn't been confirmed, then it hasn't been confirmed.
Yeah, yeah.
And they are, I mean, those guys have, good for them. Their podcast really took off. They wound up getting featured in a Radiant Black comic. They've
Hmm.
gotten to like, they're the Circle Guy News for that stories. Like
Yeah.
they're really doing their thing. And because of some of that, they gotten to interview Kirkman. They've gotten some of
Oh
this
yeah,
inside
they're
info.
legit for sure. Like
Yeah. So
you
if
said,
they're
if
if you're
they
not hearing it
say it,
there,
you can take it as pretty much truth. Like they
that's
are
right. So
in the
so I
circle.
try to not even like, I used to try to, I would just Google, I wonder what's gonna happen with Invincible, and then that's how I stumbled upon their podcast in the first
Hmm.
place. And so to me now, I don't have to spend a bunch of hours Googling and guessing. I just wait, and then if they
Yeah.
post it, I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, I think season 3, man, I think, I don't know, it's gonna get wild, and probably in a way that I should be able to anticipate but can't.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm also just realizing I think my radio might have been on this whole time, so I don't know if you could hear
No,
that in the background.
no, I haven't heard nothing.
Okay, good. I was like, what is that? Is it my radio on? It's
But
not a
like we
radio, it's a
said,
CD player because I'm cool.
yeah,
Anyway.
your 8-track player.
Yeah, I do have a cassette player in here.
Oh hell yeah.
But
But
yeah, I think it's gonna get super nuts. And I should be able to guess, but I feel like we are all hoping for Invincible War at some point to come
mhm,
sooner rather than later, and it seems like we're on our way to it. I don't know, because they're ramping up the Viltrumite War stuff too. Like everything's kind of
yeah.
ramping up at a pace that seems unmaintainable. Like
Hmm.
there's so many stories that are happening already that I don't know what they're going to pick for season 3, because you could do one of them for an entire season 3. You could do
Easily.
one of them for an entire season 4, and you could keep going.
Hmm.
So it could, you could do one whole season of, what did we get? 8 episodes.
Yeah.
You could get one whole 6 to 10 episode season, really, of probably Viltrumite War and the Invincible
Oh,
War, and all the stuff
easily.
with Battle Beast stuff. You have so many extra things, plus being able to throw in any Guardians type stuff.
Hmm.
Then you got the robot story stuff. I mean, there's
Dude,
I the only one of those
Robot
that I mentioned.
Man. Oh my
Yeah, the only
god.
thing that I've mentioned that I don't see happening in season 3 is the robot stuff. Like
Yeah, that's
maybe,
gonna be later for
yeah,
sure.
maybe hinting, maybe little
Hmm.
hints. I would not be surprised if the Flaxons came back a little bit. But they got the Sequid thing going too, so it's like, it's there's so many things that I don't know that I could pick and be like, I would bet any kind of money on this. But at the same time, if they did it, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense, of course. But
Hmm.
I don't know, the whole, it's we might not get any breaks. We might just be sweating the whole season, because I don't know. One of my favorite things about how they've kept the show similar to the comic is in terms of feel.
Yeah.
They really do, they do it just like the comic. Not the shot for shot type stuff, but
Hmm.
in terms of feel, it is, you don't have breaks. And like, I mean, we
Yeah.
went from Anissa right to Angstrom without you have no pause
No,
at all.
yeah, no
And
breath
they're
at
gonna
all.
keep doing that,
Yeah, I
I think.
agree. And I think it's like, again, I'm just so interested to see how they're going to play the rest of, not even just season 3, but however many seasons they decide to do. Because like you said, we could do an entire you could do an entire season on just the Invincible War. I think like just
Oh
that
yeah.
story alone could be 8 episodes, and not even
Yeah.
getting into the Viltrumite War, you could get like 2 seasons of content out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, there's
insane.
so
And
many side stories to each
yeah,
piece. Is like, you've got, oh, here's the Viltrum, that you got the Viltrumite War. Well, now we got a whole episode just for Space Racer. Well, now we
yeah.
got an episode for Tech Jacket. Now we got,
Mhm.
all these supporting characters that would be awesome to see brought in. Don't know. obviously Space Racer, we already know it's going to happen, but
Hmm.
some of those is like, are they going to do it? Are they going to swap it out for a different character? Are they going to create a new one? What are they going to do? Each of those pieces could have their own episode. So it's who knows what they're going to do.
Yeah. And like you said too, how they've been kind of copy and pasting the storylines as well from the comics. It's really anybody's guess of what we could get. I mean, I if I were a betting man, I would probably say Invincible War, but if I'm being realistic, like you said, there's so much going on. We could have an entire season just of more of the kind of side stories and like leave off on introducing Invincible War, right? And then
Yeah.
have a whole nother season just for that. So again, it's just like anybody's guess. But one thing I do think may be coming in season 3 that I want to talk to you about, and the reason I bring up all this future talk when we start talking about Anissa, is that she says that she's the first to come when she's fighting Mark. She's like, I'm only the first to come. Like, there will be others. And we reading the comics know who that other person is. Being, being Conquest. And that's, I mean, you just said there's really no breaths in the Invincible comic. I devoured the 3 compendiums I had, not only just because I was covering it for work, but I literally could not stop myself. Like it's
Yeah.
just like it's nonstop and you don't breathe. And it's just like you have to read the next
You
issue
have to know. Yeah.
immediately. But I gotta say, Conquest was definitely one of the storylines from the entire series that definitely sticks out for sure. And I feel like Anissa's line there was a little tease that we're going to be getting that in season
Oh
3.
yeah.
So what do you think we're going to be getting our boy Conquest coming in?
I I think so. Just because like we've already seen him in a background before,
Mm-hmm.
um,
True. I didn't
in
think about
season
that.
one,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was season one.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you see it, you're like, oh, that's so cool. And
Mm-hmm.
people who read the comics know right away, but um, I don't know. I feel like I don't know when in the season they'll do it, but I feel like he's got to be.
I would
He
say that
has
could
to be.
honestly be the finale. Like that's a finale level thing, which going
Yep.
back to like how are they going to pace this out? Say they did it that way, that pushes Invincible War back a whole nother season. So
Yep.
again,
Yeah.
it's
It's
just like,
it's.
bro, what? How are they going to do this?
And I think actually now that we're saying it, I think Invincible War probably can't happen just because you have to ramp up. Maybe it could, but you got to ramp up some of the horrible stuff that happens in between.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They probably have other great ideas that are not even close to anything I'm thinking. So it's just there's a reason they get paid for it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just there's so many crazy things where I think anybody who is listening, who is whether you've read the comic book or not, if you're watching the show, just expect that anytime there's going to be a break from a season or if it's a mid-season break,
Mm-hmm.
just be prepared. You're going to be annoyed because it's going to be a brutal cliffhanger. I'm confident until they get to the show's over. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? For
Yeah.
however many seasons they make it last, 500 years or however long the show's going to go, it every time a season ends, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, how long do I have to wait? I need to know.
Yeah.
Every time the mid-season, if they do a mid-season break again, you're going to do the same thing because they're going to do, whether it's Conquest or it's some other scenario, it's just going to be, wait, it's over. No,
Mm-hmm.
what am I supposed to do?
Well, let's
Yeah.
let's crunch some numbers here, Ricky. So we got 2 seasons right now, and I would say again, you've been revisiting the comic recently. I would say that roughly with the 2 seasons, that kind of takes us through at least the first compendium. And like I said, I want to really iterate roughly because, like we said, the storylines kind of jump around a lot. But
Yeah.
I would say more or less, like I said, we get through the first compendium. So if we're going by that logic, we can assume that we're going to have at least 6 seasons of the show. But like we're talking about, I don't see how we can fit all of it. Do you think we could fit all this stuff into 6 seasons? I don't know, man.
No, I
Yeah.
don't. But because of the pacing, it was like you said, like, I actually meant to check the compendium before I left my house just to see what
Mm-hmm.
the last couple pages of the first one is. Because I was going through digitals and I'm in volume 9 right now,
Okay.
which is post Angstrom. And after, most of the stuff we've covered, Alan's already jacked and whatever.
Mhm.
And it like beginning of volume 9 is when Mark and Amber break up, or the end of 8 maybe, and then volume 9. I can't remember where it actually switches.
Yeah.
But like Eve just walked in and was like, "Are we dating now or what?" Like
Yeah.
that's the last scene that I read in the comic.
I know the first
And
compendium, the last page. Well, I know the issue is issue 47. And then the last thing we see on the compendium, which is different than the show, which, so again, a little bit of spoilers, but we see D.A. Sinclair's uh,
oh
zombie
yeah,
army for the DEA or DI, or whatever they call it.
DA.
The
Oh, for
Cecil's,
GDA. For
yeah,
yeah.
GDA, Cecil's, club.
The Global Defense Agency.
Yeah. So, and I mean, again, we're talking about all this shit that's in the comic books, the D.A. Sinclair stuff and his, what do they call those things? There's a name for him. I
The
forget.
Reaniman.
Yeah. Reaniman. That's a whole fucking thing, dude. Like, I mean, again, that could be almost half a season
Oh
just with
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And I don't even want to allude to, because like this was another one of my favorite parts, but stuff that happens with Mark and the GDA. I don't want to again get too specific because I love that stuff too.
Right.
Again, could be an entire season.
So what was what did you say the last issue of the compendium was?
47.
Okay, cool. That's the last issue of volume 9.
Okay, yeah. So yeah,
So
that's the
so yeah.
last one of Compendium 1.
Yeah, and like one of the opening pages of volume 9 is Mark and Anissa going to stop the kaiju at the boat.
Yep.
Sorry, I was like, I wasn't studying closely
Oh
into
no,
the
you're
lens.
good.
I was trying to read the fine print of the comic to see what it said the final
Close up
page
on
was.
Ricky.
Yeah, I still had it on my Kindle, but I felt like was that Ace Ventura when Jim Carrey's like up in the
Yeah.
the peephole or whatever. Yeah, it's hard to say because they have, just because of how they've paced it, they may overlap a bunch of stories, but it's great because there's been shows and movies that have done that where you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that thing that just happened 20 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Totally forgot, because they rope you into another branch, and then by the time it's done, you're covering, I don't know, 3-4 different little pieces of story
Mm-hmm.
in 1 hour, which can stem into, they can just pick their next episode might just be one of those.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think 6 seasons doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah.
Because we got, like you said, the pacing, 3 compendiums, maybe. I just don't. I think it depends a lot though on popularity. Like if people are watching it, the possibility of stretching it longer is there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just a money thing, sure.
Yeah.
But
Just
I
business.
also, yeah, and I don't know if they're going to do things like the Adam Eve special where they'll do all the little side comics like Brit and more Guardians of the Globe stuff or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Wolfman.
Or like Wolfman. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
there was some cool ideas getting kicked around about that. I would love any of that stuff, just to like, even if they're shorts or something, or like a single episode little things. But maybe they'll just say this is Invincible, but this episode's focused on Guardians, or they'll do a whole series. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And
I think they're going
I'm,
to have to do more of these kind of special sort of things. Like you just said, the Adam Eve, because
I would
like we're
love that.
talking about, there's so much to get to. If we are going to try and at least loosely stick to this, like I said, 2 season per compendium kind of template that we're started with,
Yeah.
we're going to have to get some kind of hour-long specials or something to fit all the different moving pieces together, which leads perfectly into something else I want to talk to you about. So recently, Robert Kirkman did an interview and he said that an Invincible movie is in the works and like very early on, like trying to figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I am very on the fence about myself. And I mean, we've been talking for the last 45 minutes about how much we love Invincible comic and the show. But I want your opinion on this, Ricky. I feel like a movie could be beneficial for the problem that we're talking about right now, in the
Yeah.
sense of like fitting all of the story into the TV show. I think maybe a movie could be a really great opportunity to fit some more story if you can tie it into the show, right?
Yeah.
But I also, the other side of me though, I don't know how they would be able to pull that off. And also, if we're talking that this movie's going to be live action, which is what Kirkman was referring to, that also kind of throws me for a huge loop. Because again, I don't know. I have every faith in the world with the creative team because they've been killing it thus far. So I have no reason to doubt them. But I don't know how that would work. So again, Ricky, your opinion. Can you see a way in which that works? Can you show me the light?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but um I can I have opinions. So I know I can't remember which was announced first between the animated series and the live action, but they've said the live action was coming for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
And then I feel like I could be remembering it wrong, so I hope that doesn't make anybody sad or whatever. But I think the live action was rumored, and they had said Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg were going to be doing it.
Which
Um,
makes sense.
before they had announced that Seth Rogen was involved in the animated show,
Mhm.
and I think possibly before the animated show was even confirmed. But it could have just been a rumor at the time. I don't remember. But then the animated show got green
Mhm.
lighted, whatever. Um,
Green
it
lit.
got the okay. Yeah, so there you go. It got the okay. Sorry to mute so I could cough real quick.
You're good,
um,
man.
I think that they can do it, but they had to delay it because of all that or push it off. And I think there was actually an update where a script has been drafted and then maybe started reworking,
Mhm.
but I can't remember the last thing I remember reading. Um, I do think it's possible. The more I thought about it, because I got kind of sad, like, well, they already have it animated. How's it going to work? Well, I always forget the amount of people who take in some of the media that people enjoy, right? You can
Mhm.
have you can have 2 million people watch the animated show. I don't know what their actual numbers are,
Yeah.
but take anything. Take like Pokemon or something. That was like my entire childhood. Right? It was, but not a huge percentage of the planet, right? 2 million people is nothing
Mhm.
for global viewership. So if you make a live action movie, you have more theater goers than you do adult animation watchers.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't know for sure, but I would assume that's the case.
Mhm.
Um, where you might get a whole demographic of people, let's say 40 and up, 45 and up, maybe, who are like, I don't really watch grown up cartoons unless it's like Family Guy or South Park or The Simpsons.
Mhm.
So Invincible might be too nerdy, but they'll watch the crap out of the MCU or the DCU or whatever that they get roped in. So they'll watch it. All of us watching the show, reading the comics, probably don't really care what you do as long as it's live action
Yeah,
and
I
it's
mean,
cool.
I'm gonna be seated
Yeah.
day one,
If
even though I'm just saying like I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah, if you made it, I mean, you could tell a whole big story in 2 hours.
Mhm.
You could leave it on a cliffhanger with spoiler alert, Omni-man killing the Guardians, and I would see the second movie. I wouldn't care.
Yeah,
So then the people who don't know the stories, and I know it's weird because we're saying spoiler for a comic that started like 20 years ago,
yeah,
which
I
is
know,
wild for
right?
me to even think that it
Yeah.
was 20 years ago. Um, but because of the nature of comics, a lot of these stories like Miles Morales or any of these big popular ones now, the comics have been out for a long time. If it were a
Mhm.
movie, we'd be past the spoiler warning window.
Yeah.
But since it's comics, it's just a less consumed media. So I think they can pull it off. And I don't think it'll matter that much financially because if they get the budget to do it, it's gonna sell because the word will spread about the animated show. They'll take their friends. I'm not saying it's gonna be, Avengers Endgame or something like that, but
Mhm.
it's gonna make money. I'll see it no matter
Yeah.
what. So
I mean,
I'm hopeful.
those are really great points that I didn't really consider. Like you said, I mean, the global audience and like, because my thinking is the show has done such an amazing job. I couldn't see how a movie could do a better job if we're telling
Yeah.
the same story. So like if we did, mark like the first season, right, and make that a movie, that's again, I would be seated first day for sure, but I just don't see what the need would be because the show did it so well, right? But I
Right.
think
Yep.
you bring up a great point in that, yeah, we watch the show because we're fucking nerds, right? But there's, so many people around the world that probably have no idea about it. But if it's a
No.
movie, they'll be aware of it because of the,
Yeah.
there's going to be a bigger marketing push for that kind of stuff. But I just feel like, I don't know, man. Again, I think, again, this goes back to your point, which, again, is a great one of the global audience. But for me, being the, hardcore nerd, I could not imagine someone being Mark besides Steven Yeun. Like, if they somehow got him to do live
Yeah.
action Mark, then I'm 100% sold. Which, again, though, it's like,
Yeah.
how is that going to work? Because Mark's, Steven's a little older than Mark is, right?
Yeah, because I
So
mean, he's still in his 30s, and I think, and he looks pretty young,
no, he does look young for sure.
but he doesn't look
Not
16.
16 young. That's what I mean. But it's like,
I mean, they aged down
imagine,
Robert Downey Jr. in that one, they
yeah,
made him look, and Samuel L. Jackson and Captain Marvel, they aged him back 20 years or whatever they
yeah.
did. So
But
I don't know.
am I wrong to say though that if you saw it, like, again, imagine live action Invincible movie pops up and then some, whoever it is playing Mark and it's not Steven Yeun. Wouldn't that be a little weird? Am I alone in that camp thinking that
No, I
I
think
would just be like, man, that's so,
not by look. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, it doesn't look like him. But if I hear his voice, I'd be like, that's weird.
Yeah, the voice, and I
Um,
don't know. I just like, again, to me, it just a tribute to how great of a voice actor he is and how great of a job he's doing. But it's like Steven is Mark for me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So to
he
think of
really is
someone
doing
else
good.
in that role is very weird. Same thing with like Omni-Man, J.K. Simmons and Omni-Man.
Yeah, I
Like,
can't even. So, and
yeah,
he's still in great shape from some of the stuff I've
dude,
seen, but like,
man,
he's not,
shredded.
yeah, he's not Omni-Man because he's supposed to look like a 40-ish kind of year
Yeah.
old dude, depending on how early he grade, I guess, but like,
Mhm.
and be beefy.
Yeah.
Now it's a superhero movie, so you probably don't have to be that beefy, but I mean, I don't know. It's the same for me with Alan. Like, to me, live
Yeah.
action casting, I think everybody pretty much unanimously agrees that The Rock is Alan live action because he's already bald.
That's
They've done the
fucking insane.
Photoshop
I
with
never even thought of that, but now that you
really.
say that,
So
holy
have you
no,
haven't seen?
I've seen the Photoshop, yeah, but I've just
Okay, yeah,
just passed it off as a joke, you know what I mean?
they
But
put him
holy
in there as
shit.
like give him one eye, and I remember when reading the jailbreak scene when they're in the Viltrumite
Yeah.
prison and they break out and Alan's huge now and it has that one shot. I don't remember the issue number or anything. Um, but he's like sitting there and he's all
Dude.
huge. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, he just, and like the lighting made him less pinkish. And
Yeah.
I'm like, he just looks like The Rock. Like, he just looked more like he had a tan. I'm
Yeah.
like, that guy, it's The Rock. And then years later, now they're talking live action, but I can't hear anybody but Seth Rogen doing his
Mm-hmm.
voice.
Yeah,
So
they
it's
have to
like,
do a
it'd just be weird.
CGI Alan and just have Seth Rogen
Yeah.
voice him.
And
That would be
same
my
with
choice.
Sandra Oh could do it because she can still be a mom, no
Yeah, she
problem.
could for sure play
She's
Debbie, I
pretty
think, no
young.
problem.
Yeah, and so we got that. So what? We'll get just her, I guess.
We'll
I
get
don't know, but
Sandra. Yeah.
well,
Sandra and Zazie
because even
Beats.
and yeah, and I even like Gillian Michaels. I think she actually says Gillian. I remember I called her Jillian watching Community, and somebody's like, no, she actually says Gillian. Anyway, so hopefully I'm not butchering her name, but her voice as Eve is really good. The
Mm-hmm.
whole voice cast is really good. The only one I
Yeah,
actually
top tier.
I really didn't like Ezra Miller. I did not care for
Oh
his
yeah.
voiceover, so it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Um,
Worked out
but
that
yeah,
they
like
turned out to be a shit person.
right, but like even for Adam Eve, I think basically if you're past your mid 30s, and I think most of them are in that 30 to 40 age
Mm-hmm.
range. I'm not 100% sure. It's probably a little tough to high school down.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they
now
would have to do a
obviously,
whole new cast.
what's his face? Um, gosh dang it, Joe Manganiello playing Flash Thompson and like in the old
Yeah.
spot, like, or even Tobey Maguire. I think he was like 27 or something playing a
Dude,
high
they
school
were
kid.
all super old in that
Yeah, and
movie.
like I remember remember the Titans, right? So I
Mm.
remember playing football in high school. We watched that movie all the time.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, man, these guys are I'm such a small little high school kid. And then I realized they're all like 35.
Yeah.
So so I don't know. I mean, they could do it, but I think people are kind of wise to that now. So you'd have to
Mhm.
be, I don't know. It'd be tough. The casting would be tough, but I'd say based on how the voice stuff went, that Kirkman will probably figure it out.
Yeah, that's why
Uh,
I say like while I may not see the vision yet, that's why I preface the whole conversation with like they have hit it out of the park in every aspect in my opinion thus far. So I have no reason to doubt that they will figure it out. And then like you said too, that's why they get paid the big bucks to write this shit.
yeah.
And I just talk about shit on the internet because like I said, while maybe I don't see the vision yet, I have faith that they can pull it off, but
Yeah.
I don't know. The one thing though I do want to say, going back to the whole time aspect of everything, is with the movie. One of the ideas that I've had, and I think is in my mind, again, this is why I don't get paid the big bucks. But the way that I could see it really working well, at least for me, is if they somehow do it where the movie ties into the show. So
That would be sick.
instead of having like another season for let's just say Viltrumite War, just for an example, we get a movie for the Viltrumite War, and it's 2 hours of just that
Man.
specific story, and it's still part of the show, but it's just a two. You can think of it as like a special, right? But with
Yeah.
the budget and live action, I think that for me that would work, and I think that could be also a way to, like we said, fit in some of all these huge things that we're getting to. So, what do you think that could be a route that they could go?
I mean, I think anything's possible. Like I've kind of, as I've aged, I've kind of gotten away from like expectations, I guess.
Mhm.
And not in like the sad way, like MJ says in like the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, where it's just like, don't expect stuff, disappointed. Although there's some truth to it. But I just like, ever since I just posted about this on Twitter today, I think, ever since I was wrong about Heath Ledger as the Joker, I just don't even
Yeah.
put thought into it. I'm just like, you know what? If I get too amped up,
Hmm.
like, oh, Henry Cavill's gonna come back as Superman, and then it doesn't happen, then I'm sad for no reason.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Like, so I try to not do too much, but I think they could pull that off. And I, as a
Hmm.
fan, would be hugely excited to see, oh, we're just going to go to the big screen now to finish this off, whether they did it live
Yeah.
action or animated or whatever.
So that way we don't have to
And
backtrack.
yeah, and you could, no idea. But to me, seeing the success of these ridiculous Godzilla movies recently, where like I'm like, I haven't watched them. I'm very excited to watch them. I'm gonna go all the way back to Godzilla 2000 and just
I
like
love a good
watch,
monster fight,
just
dude.
because like, but so many people turned out to watch these movies that are basically just, it's not tied to something. It's just like, oh, it's Godzilla and King Kong and there's some stuff happening. Here's a cool trailer. Go see it.
Hmm.
I feel like you could do that with the Viltrumite War
Oh
or
yeah.
something like, and give basically no real information, which would be
Hmm.
a refreshing to have no information in a trailer, and people just be like, "Dang, that looks awesome. Let's go to." And I think for a chunk of time we were kind of like, well, gone are the days of people just going because a movie looks cool,
Hmm.
and I think that might be coming back a little bit where people are just like, "Hey, man, we went a couple years without really going to theater, so like hook it up,
Well,
just make it fun."
what was
You
that
know,
one movie recently? The Dementor. And like literally it was like people were just like Dracula on a boat. Bet I'm fucking there. And it fucking killed at the box
is
office,
that
which
what
I
that was
mean,
about?
granted, it was a really great movie. I watched it. I really enjoyed it. But like the basically online, people were just like, "Oh shit, Dracula's on a boat," and like it became almost
Yeah,
not a meme, but kind of a meme. Like everyone just like, "Oh, that sounds fucking crazy." And like I said,
yeah.
turned out to be a great movie. So I think you got a really good point where people are getting back to, "Oh, this looks cool. Let's just go pop that
Well, yeah,
on."
we just said, what do we have? Cocaine Bear, just like last year or 2 years ago, whatever.
Yes,
Like,
another
I
great
still haven't
example.
watched it, but like, I plan to eventually, but like,
Yeah.
people just want something fun. Some
Hmm.
people want Oppenheimer type stuff. Some people want just make me laugh or blow
Hmm.
some crap up. I, to me, I think that's very doable. I wouldn't mind, especially for how uh multiverse friendly I think the viewing populace has become. Like
Yeah.
everybody's just like, oh, there's a bunch of universes with a bunch of nerdy crap. Okay, cool, I'll go see it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It's like
And
common knowledge now, which is
yeah,
so
I could have
crazy
never
to think
ever
about.
imagined that. Which, and it's pretty wild considering how um that stuff was introduced before I was alive. I mean, and then it kind of faded out, and DC played a, there's actually, if you're ever, just three documentaries I watched recently. Um, Turtle Power, the Ninja Turtles one. If anybody just wants to watch that, it's great.
Hmm.
Claremont's X-Men on, I think it's on Prime, and then
Oh, they
the
got a documentary about that?
yeah, it's great. And then
No
if
shit.
you
I'm about
so
to.
if you're picking like a Marvel and a DC one, you watch the Claremont one, and then watch Super Powered on Max.
Mhm.
It's a few episodes long. It's actually narrated by Rosario Dawson, who's a Disney MCU tied person, which is interesting. But anyway,
Hmm.
it goes through like history of DC's development and different things, and they talk about multiverse concepts and things that
Mhm.
happened and then got taken away and then brought back. And that stuff has been around, but if you weren't reading comic books, you didn't think about that stuff. And
Oh
then
no.
they touch on it. And as a kid, I would have been like, oh, that's so cool to be able to do that. But we've gotten so crazy and ridiculous and accepting of multiversal concepts in film that it's to the point where I don't even think it's fully out of the question for like a Marvel versus DC movie, because it's people are
No.
just down for
Definitely
it. So
not.
I think that because of that, Invincible can kind of do whatever it wants. You can have one of the evil Mark universes is just going to be a movie. I don't know. You can
Yeah,
do
why
whatever
the
you
hell
want.
not?
Maybe that's what they're going to do is, hey, he's going to go murder all these kids and you're going to watch it. And you're like, what? Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's not what I expected, but you got another one? I'll watch another one. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
and I
was
think that movies like Spider-Verse, I think is the best
yeah.
example, have really kind of just opened the floodgates to what you're talking about. Like anything is
Yeah.
really possible now. And I think that people, even your general audience, because I think for a long time, especially for people kind of like executives and whatnot, I could totally understand the thought of like, okay, well, yeah, nerds love multiverses and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
general people aren't going to understand that, right? But I think,
Yeah.
like I said, with multiverse and Beyond the Spider Verse, those kind of movies have really made, like you said, the idea of multiple realities and all that very common. So I think if Invincible just tomorrow was like, hey, season 2 is going to have an episode that's a movie and it's going to be live action, fuck it, like that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
People would just be like, okay, like let's do it.
Yeah. Why
And
not?
yeah, it's like we all just want to have a good ass time. And I think that now is the perfect time to really, and with how Invincible has gone on with these 2 seasons, I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to continue doing new and experimental kind of things to tell this story. So I think again, having the movie tie into the show, I think is definitely not out of the cards for sure.
No, and I'm excited because of how I've never met him, but how I have interpreted Robert Kirkman to be, and Corey
Mm-hmm.
Walker. And everybody sees Ryan Otley super cool, like on the internet. We see these guys online, but seeing how Corey and Rob, I'll just call them that because obviously we're like super cool and
Yeah,
tight and
best
whatever. But
friends.
these two guys, like, they care about this property, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like a balance between like with music or really any kind of art, right? Anything that would fall into an art zone,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a selling out part and there's an acceptable amount. Like you make the stuff that sells so you can make the stuff you want.
Yeah.
Um, and but I don't think that that's even going to be on the table as an option for these two guys. I think because they've been so meticulous, it seems like, and cautious and patient, they're set up to a place where this success, I mean, like Walking Dead had massive success. So
Yeah.
Kirkman's already got that behind him. And now Invincible taken off the way it has. I think it gives them the freedom to actually do it the way they want to do it, to ensure that the casting is done right, that the pacing of the stories is done the way they want it.
Mm-hmm.
They're slowly building in a larger fan base, kind of like not on the same level, but the way like the MCU can basically just make anything,
Yeah.
and we'll go watch it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll watch it, and I, even if I hate it, I'll probably watch it twice. Like,
Yeah.
I won't hate it. It's pretty
I would
unlikely
say
at
it's
this point that I'm going to hate something. I just don't care enough to be like, oh, that ruined my life, a stupid movie.
Yeah.
But like, but you know what I mean? Like they have a built-in fan base who's just gonna see it no matter what. And I think having the patience that they seem to have with and the attention to detail and care for their properties is gonna be the difference maker. Because it seems like I didn't watch the Flash multiverse movie. I would like to eventually, but I just never did.
You're not
I
missing
think
much, I'll tell you.
yeah, and it seemed like cool. It'd be cool, but not
Mhm.
amazing. But the difference maker wasn't that they did a multiverse thing, because Spider Verse was great. The
Yeah.
difference is just how they executed what they
Hmm.
did,
Yeah.
and I don't think we have to worry about execution at least not yet. I don't think. To me, if Kirkman hasn't, if his head hasn't gotten like too big for him to keep up with, I don't think it will at this point, because Walking Dead was ridiculously
Dude,
popular. I don't know how you make it through that and
massive.
remain normal,
Yeah.
because that's another one. 20-year-old book, and yeah, I quit reading the book. I was probably 160 issues in or whatever. Whenever the Whisper War was, I
Hmm.
stopped reading. But like, not because I had a problem. I was just tired, man.
Yeah.
So, and I was pulling too many things. And but that for that to blow up the way it did with a bunch of non-comic reading people, and he's seemingly a normal person still.
Hmm.
I think we as fans are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean, Walking Dead came out. I think I remember I was like in middle school, and I mean, I was way more of like a Marvel DC kind of kid, so I wasn't really reading a lot of like Image and stuff like that. I didn't even know that The Walking Dead was a comic until like way later. But the show, like I said, that's how big the show was. It was the talk of the town. It was like
Oh
Game of
yeah,
Thrones before Game of Thrones was on. Like everyone
yep.
talked about Walking Dead. So, like you said, I don't. It's not like Kirkman is looking for the paycheck, right? Like
No,
he's my
that's
dude
a
is set.
relief.
Yeah.
I think anyway, and I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They're like, oh, I got it. I better get the next one. I got to get the next
Hmm.
one. Instead of being like, I could just not buy a boat and another boat and 5 houses and 18 cars, and I could probably make the stuff I want to make and still be
Hmm.
pretty well off.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to ask too before we wrap up this discussion, kind of again going back to the whole how they're playing the time frame of all this stuff. I uh I really feel like, at least in my opinion, the the break that they took in this season really shot themselves in the foot, and not in the matter of like quality or anything. The episodes were just as good as they were in the first half, but I just feel like the break really kind of put a pause on the momentum. And like we were just talking about 20 minutes ago now, is one of the great things about the comic is that there is no real break. Like it just is, it's going and going. And I know that you probably have a more unique perspective on this because you were reading Invincible as it was coming out, right? So like
Sort of, yeah. I
those
came in
kind
late.
of you experience those kind of month-long waits
Ugh,
for an issue and stuff like that.
yes.
So I feel like you maybe have a little different of perspective of this than me, but like I said, I really feel like this break kind of shot them in the foot, and I'm really hoping that moving forward we don't have any more, like, the ship kind of keeps on moving. But what do you think about that?
I think it probably depends on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think adult type animation, and I'll even lump in like Dragon Ball Z or any of the anime type stuff that's really popular, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
this has a lot of that feel. I think that sort of lends itself to weird obsessive nerdiness where
Mm-hmm.
you will you can almost bank on, well, if we have a mid-season break, they're all going to go back and watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because like, and that may not be at all in their minds, but to me, if you're a lot of this is based on views, for how you continue to grow the show, and I'm not all saying that's why they chose it, but for
Mm-hmm.
me, I went back and watched the first couple episodes again because
Yeah.
I wanted to get back in the swing. Just like when you're
Mm-hmm.
coming into the next season, you go back and watch the first season
Yep.
sometimes, or at least throw it on the background or something.
Yeah.
But like that probably saves them a little bit. For me, I didn't want the break,
Mm-hmm.
but I welcomed it after it came because I've got several children, so it was nice to be like, oh, okay, I'm not falling behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. we're good. And so there's that. I don't know that I do think that that momentum, if you didn't go back and watch it, you kind of lose that.
Hmm.
It's almost like pausing an argument and coming back like 2-3 days later.
Yeah.
The end result may still be fine, but it's like, what were we talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. See, my
You know,
main worry is I agree with you 100%. I think that that was the kind of, mind escape that was, going into this decision making with the break. But my worry is more so for, like we were talking about, the more general fans that are like they're
yeah,
enjoying the show, they're watching the show, but they might not know about the comics and they're not like obsessed with it, right? And
yeah,
I feel like for a lot of people, like when the season came back, they like either just weren't aware that it came back at all,
mm-hmm.
then they missed it, and it just felt like the conversation wasn't as on fire as it was for the first half of the season. And like I said, for us, it doesn't matter because we're going to be watching anyway. But it makes me worried for, again, those more casual people. If we keep having these breaks, they might, again, forget about it, forget to come back to it. And then we're going to be in a situation like we're talking about, like we don't have the views to keep on going. Right. And
Yeah,
that's what kind of worries me about it. And so, like I said, I don't want to say that as like a negative thing of like, oh, like the break ruined the season, like nothing like that. Again, for me, it worked fine. But does it at all worry you as well? Like I said, for the more casual viewers, that if we keep having these kind of long breaks, and I mean, it was like 2 years in between seasons.
yeah,
You think that that might lose some of the more, again, like you were saying, the adult animation watchers, but not necessarily like hardcore comic nerds?
yeah. I think that's a valid concern. We have a lot of, I'm told, a lot of good TV out right now. I'm fortunate enough to not be watching a lot of it just because I'm just like, well, I don't want to think about anything. Let me just turn on The Office again or something,
Yeah.
But there's so many things which I mean we've mentioned the MCU a few times. They kind of dealt with that with some of their, they did almost, I was okay with it, but they did too many shows too close together, too many
Hmm.
movies, too many shows, all this stuff to where people couldn't keep up and they just got wore
Yeah.
out and they're like, ah, forget it, I don't care anymore.
Hmm.
Now it's all there to stream so they can catch up. Like I have to catch up, right? But I think that's valid because like you said, people, there's so many other shows out there. If people have a routine and they're like, I watch TV at these times a day.
Yeah.
Well, my show's not happening. Time to find a new show. And then you never go back to that other show. Um, there's just, I think that the potential is there. And it certainly happened. I mean, for us nerd types, I think it is difficult. Well, really, for anybody who's on social media to have, to not be short sighted, and to have like too closed off of a view of things
Hmm.
where that somebody will post and say, well, gosh, this mid-season break really killed it for me, I'm out. And I've seen a few people post stuff like
Yeah.
that, and then you'll see in the comments it's like, oh, no, 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 if you read the comics you'll know you want to stick around. Or but not most people that I saw responding aren't saying tactful things. They're saying like, oh, you're a piece of crap and you don't even love it, it's just like, well, not everybody is obsessed with this stuff. Not
Yeah.
everybody has the time for it. I blew off Invincible until 2000, I don't know, 13 or 14 or something, probably. No, something like that. I mean, I was around issue 100 when I started reading.
Hmm.
Because in high school, I was like, why is that corny dude got the Image logo on his chest? Like, I'm not going to read that book. That's dumb. And then I kept hearing about it over the years. I kept hearing about it and hearing about it. People won't shut up about it. Even like Drake Bell from like Nickelodeon and stuff. I remember
Hmm.
seeing him at like a Comic Con where like, if you could play a character,
Oh,
who would it be? And
really?
yeah, and he was like invincible. And I'm like, dang, is this like, this is for real? Like
This is like
everybody's,
popular.
yeah, like people are talking about it. Nobody I work with or knew about it, but I'd
Hmm.
always seen it in the comic shops when I went through. So I finally start reading it, and I mean, I blasted through 100 or 102 maybe issues, something like that. Then it was month to month, and it was miserable.
Dude, like I said, it's
But
so easy to just
oh yeah,
devour those
but
issues.
not everybody has that connection to it. So yeah, I think it's a fair concern that
Yeah. And it
at
also
least a dip.
worries. Hmm. It also worries me too, just with what we're talking about, like the kind of feel of the comic book, which I think the show has done so well thus far. With, like we said, the feeling of like you can't take a breath. Like
Yeah.
at once something's done, something else is right around the corner. And again, I do want to preface too, like I had the compendium. I did not read it as it was coming out, so that perspective could be different from someone who did wait month by month for however many years. But I just worry that, again, if they keep taking these very long breaks, it could affect that, like, again, that feeling that we got from the comic of the intensity and the non-stopness that we get. But
Yeah.
again, that could just be from me binging the entire series. And again, like you said, I have faith in Kirkman and all of them that they will figure it out. So, that's why they get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
That's why
Well,
I'm
having those
sitting
season
here.
recaps helps. Not or not
Hmm.
the episode recaps. Those are helpful because they
Yeah.
do dip all the way back to the first season when it's going to apply,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I forgot about
Those
that
are
thing.
super
Okay,
helpful. Yeah,
so
for
that's
sure.
I don't like when people are like, don't skip the X-Men 97 theme. I do not skip the recaps on Invincible unless I watch back to back.
Hmm.
I otherwise if I'm coming back week to week, I don't skip it because I'm gonna there's so much going on. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Well, like
forget.
you said, I mean, they bring stuff back from season one. And so
Yeah.
even if you did watch the episode right before, you probably still should watch the recap because they
Yep.
might bring something in that
Look what they
you're
did with
not
the
even thinking
seclets. You
of.
just I
Yeah.
forgot they were like just like in the comics though. I'm like, oh yeah, those things. Gosh dang it. And then it's like this insane thing that you forgot
Hmm.
was even happening. And they're doing it and they're about to do it again. It's just
And
like ugh.
so I gotta ask, Ricky, we're coming in on our time here, but I gotta ask you before we get out of here. We've talked about all these Invincible things, the comic book, the show, all that sort of stuff, even theorized about season three a little bit. I gotta ask you, out of what is it, 148 issues, I think, of Invincible,
I think it's
150 maybe.
144.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Out of all these issues and out of all the craziness that goes on in these issues that we have both talked about and alluded to, without giving too much away, what's one, at least one, that like you are just dying to see, an event, a moment? Is there a particular one? Again, we've talked about, there's so many great ones, but is there like one in particular that you can't wait to get to or hope that we get to?
I mean, so yeah, I'll probably say a couple. I am personally very interested in when they're going to introduce, if ever, Best Tiger. I thought he was such a cool character, small but really
Hmm.
cool, and not anything to do with like the main stuff, but I really liked him. But they haven't even touched. Dinosaurus hasn't come up.
Yes.
We've got I mentioned Tech Jacket earlier, hasn't even brought up. We've got all the potential stuff with Battle Beast, Conquest. I don't know. I think I wasn't initially gonna say Dinosaurus, but that one might be up there now that I'm thinking
Low
about it. I
key,
I don't know.
low key, that was gonna be my answer too, I think. Dinosaurs. I mean, like you said, there's so
It's
many
just an
crazy
intense.
ones.
It's such a. It's really compelling for. It's annoying. There's a lot of annoying things that happen. That's just like, oh my gosh, Mark, just walk away. But then it's like, it just there's so many things about it that make it interesting. Um, that would be a lot of fun, and that by itself is a whole season.
Hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. There, I would really like. I just Battle Beast and Conquest are awesome. I
Easy
mean, just
ones.
brutal stuff. And Angstrom wasn't one of my favorite villains, but not because he wasn't awesome. It's just because there's so many great things.
Yeah.
I am, yeah, I'm kind of ready to see those things happen. But I kind of up until you were asking me, I was like, oh wait, well, we haven't even talked about Dinosaurus yet.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And yeah, my little secret thing was like would Best Tiger was really cool. So it'd be cool to have him. And I really think Tech Jacket's really cool. So Like to
Which I
see some of
saw
that.
something, maybe you know a little bit more about this than I do because I know, virtually nothing. But I saw somebody talking about how potentially they might not be able to use Tech Jacket in the
Yeah,
show because of rights issues. Like, is he's owned by Image then, or?
yeah. I can't remember the exact breakdown because it's like Image, their creators own the stuff,
Mm-hmm,
and they have like cool rules that make it so it's your stuff, and they just make money off of a certain piece.
mm-hmm.
But the characters are your characters, and someone else who knows industry stuff better would answer that better. I think there is a thing though where it might not have been a solely Kirkman thing. I can't remember. I think the
Yeah.
Invincible podcast explained it a couple years ago
But there is a thing
during
about it, right? Like, I'm
there.
not
Yeah,
just
for
like
sure. It's You're
making
not
that
making
up.
that up.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. I really liked his story was just kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
His abilities were kind of cool. But yeah, now I'm kind of like
I'm with
I can't
you.
even remember like what my favorite villain or even scenario was, because like Dinosaurus is really compelling because of he's like not a villain, but he is a villain, but he's not really an anti-hero, but
Mm-hmm.
it's weird, and I like that. And Cecil sucks, but I also really like him
I
because I'm
love
talking in the comics,
Cecil.
like right,
Yeah.
like we love him so far in the show, and I've there's a lot of things he does that I find oddly relatable, and that probably sounds weird, but just like the way he approaches stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the worst, but he's also awesome. And so like in the comics, he consistently makes you mad,
Mm-hmm.
but for good reason most of the time. But then, like I said, we still have all of the Flaxen stuff and the robot stuff still to, you know, if
That
they,
could
I
be a
assume they're
movie.
gonna do it.
Speaking of movies,
Yeah,
that could be honestly
you talk about
yo,
yeah, that would be insane to get to that. And that is for sure. That's like an Infinity War Endgame type. Give
yeah.
me 2 or maybe 3 hours. Uh, that's because it's just wild, and you can see. I think you see it more in the comic. They did a good job in the show of making Rudy less of just an obnoxious, arrogant guy. But
Mhm.
like he's just not right. And
Yeah.
he's smart enough to know that, but they do it a little softer, I think, in the show where you don't just want to kick him all the time. But like, because before he's a genius and he's annoying in the comic because he doesn't really know how to talk to people. So he has to constantly be like, well, I'm like super smart and you wouldn't understand it because you're not smart. I'm
Yeah.
smarter than everybody. Kind of like that Sheldon Big Bang Theory kind of stuff where
Hmm.
you're just like, oh, okay, you're a jerk, but you
Yeah.
don't actually understand why. And in the show, he's a little more caring, but still robotic,
Hmm.
in his actual human personality. So when that kicks off, if it ever kicks off, that might be the one.
Ooh.
There's a lot to pick
I'd
from.
say now that might be the one.
I want to see Battle Beast mess some people up. Um, I'm excited because I think they've already mentioned that Titan and Battle Beast are going to make appearances in the next season. I think that could have been some other, so don't
I
quote me on
think
that.
I
That could
saw
have been
that
some other
too.
nonsense,
But yeah, that could
but
also, I don't know if that's confirmed or not.
yeah, I can't recall.
But yeah, I'm with you though on the Dinosaurus, and that was going to be my answer as well. Just because, I mean, again, there's so many, amazing, crazy moments, and probably, I can think of a few moments that are a little bit more like spectacle, if you would. But
Yeah.
I just really think that the stuff with Dinosaurus really kind of gets at the core of Mark's character and like who Mark
Mm.
is, and really like sets us on that path of understanding him that we kind of come full circle by the end of the series. So while I love that about it in the comic book, and with all these things that we've been talking about with the show of like how they've been dealing with the character work just so well, and with these little changes, I feel like the show is going to make that even more impactful than it was in the book, when it already was, at least to me, like one of the more impactful like scenarios that Mark goes through the book. So I think that's why, for me, that's one of the most excited things I'm getting to. Besides all, like I said, the crazy battle beast, like
Yeah.
the bloody fighting stuff, which I'm also
Yeah.
excited for.
But it's like that those ones are a little more simple, I guess, because
Mhm.
Battle Beast is just here to fight, and he says that he's like, I'm just here to kill people,
Yep.
and that's it.
And look
And
fucking cool.
yeah, and that's just like his thing. And then, I mean, you still got all of the Viltrumite stuff to happen, which again is mostly fairly cut and dry. Bad guys, good guys.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got, and I mean, obviously we still have all the Thraxus stuff that's going to come from other Viltrumites and whatever comes from there that I won't spoil yet, but like the Dinosaurus story is so it's a brain teaser because there's so much stuff that's like these ethical dilemmas of like, how do you trust this thing that is a regular dude, but now it's like a weird dinosaur thing that's a genius and
Mm-hmm.
knows these things are going to save human existence, and all of a sudden like Vegas turns to glass, like all these crazy things that where conversationally, right, it's pretty compelling because it's not everybody's going to say, oh, like with Viltrumites you'll be like, oh, Mark was right to beat up Viltrumites, we already know that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the dinosaur stuff in friend circles, you'll be divided on what the choice should have been because
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's that kill one save 1,000 discussion for so much of it where I'm like, yeah, the math checks out, that's great, well, but could you do it? Oh, I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's crazy, just weird interesting stories that are stressful and infuriating. So that might be some, I mean, yeah, now I gotta go back and read all these comics again. Gosh dang it.
Crack open your compendiums, man, and everyone
Yeah,
watching and listening to this. If you
love
guys
it.
are loving Invincible and missing Invincible while we wait for the next season, go to your comic shop, go to your
Just read it.
bookstore, go to Amazon. Just read the hell out of it. I
Oh
promise
yeah,
you, if you love the show, you will not be able to put the comic down. Like, I 100% guarantee it. Ricky, it has been so much fun nerding out about Invincible with you today. It has been so long coming. I can't thank you enough for taking the time and coming nerding out with me today, man.
oh man, I appreciate you having me. It's like you said, it's been a long time. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it has been the better part of a month of us
Yeah.
just trying to line schedules up and make it work, and you know time zone differences and work whatever, and I'm getting texts from you when my notifications are on silent because I'm sleeping or
Dude.
whatever.
Yep.
And
You and me
so
both,
yeah,
man.
it's great. And I forgot because I haven't had a podcast Invincible chat in a couple of years. And then you forget, oh man, this could take all day. We could
Oh
keep
man, we could
going.
be here for another long while, but I already
Yeah,
know you got important stuff to do and we've already been sitting here. But I mean, again, man, it's just been so much fun. We have to do
for
it
sure.
again. Hopefully
Absolutely.
this next time we can get the schedule right on the first time. But you are always welcome here, my friend. Like I said, Ricky's been a longtime friend of the show, even though he hasn't been on here yet. So this definitely has to happen more often. Ricky,
Absolutely,
before
man.
we get out of here though, I want to throw it off to you really quickly. Tell the people at home where they can find you. Are we hoping for any more weekly polls coming? I know, like we talked about, schedules are just hard to link up, but any plans for more episodes?
Yeah, me and Derek have been talking. We actually were gonna do like a Murder Falcon hardcover thing at one point.
Ooh, hell yeah.
We may still do that because that doesn't get old. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we've got plans to keep things going. We're just in a touch of a busy season for his job, my job. Baseball season just started with all the kids in little league running around. But yeah, there are still plans for that. I'm on the Twitter. I refuse to call it X because it's just so weird.
Never.
And so Twitter or whatever. And then Instagram and Threads, which is basically the same. So those places, and I don't know, I'm kind of randomly helping with some projects here and there, just goofing around with some different stuff. So if you're on or near my Twitter, you'll see all of those different things. Um, nothing, nothing super crazy, but I guess there was an issue a handful of months ago that which is Mrs. H on Twitter. She
Mm-hmm.
put out for her Captain Orange series that she let me write. That's probably the most recent
Hey, that's
other than
awesome.
podcast stuff. So yeah, a lot of little goofy stuff we're doing here and there. Other than that, I mean, I can't remember even my own Twitter handle right now off the top of my head. I think it's Z13 with parts spelled out. But anyway, I'll I'm sure you can put all that stuff in the
Yeah.
show notes. If you're up for it, I'll send you everything.
Yeah, I'll like I said, you don't worry about that. I can take care of that for you.
You're the man.
I will be putting all of Ricky's links to his socials, to his other podcasts. All of that is going to be in the description. So please go check that out. I cannot say enough amazing things about the guy. He is just so great. Again, I can't thank you enough for being here. If you all listening and watching this enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Also, head on over to BCW Supplies and use code Sons of Mjolnir to get 10% off all your bags, boards, anything you need to collect. We have you covered. Again, that code is Sons of Mjolnir. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic week. I hope your stacks are fat. I hope you stay hydrated, and we will see you all next time.